Hello everybody, my name is Deborah Hatswell and I'm here to bring you sighting reports of British Bigfoots and other upright creatures in the UK. And today we're going to go to the Kent area, not far off the River Medway, just on the estuary there, and we have the Isle of Grain Sasquatch. And this is an account from a gentleman who was reporting on behalf of his friend, and he says, "I'm reporting this on behalf of a good friend. A friend of mine who lives in a remote Kent farmhouse and has seen a large Sasquatch-type creature on her property on a few occasions now. She has a caravan on the property and that's been rocked and banged upon. The figure has been seen leaning over a fence and also a Ford Escort van, which only came up to the top of his stomach, meaning he was an incredible size. There are very few houses in the area, and if you go there and have a look around, you can see it wouldn't be difficult to get around unseen. Situated in between All Hallows and the Isle of Grain, and as I say, it's quite isolated. There's lots of water and a few woods. It gets more wooded not too far away. It's been seen by our friends up fairly close, and I'm going to spend time camping and looking around the sighting spots. We live in the area ourselves on local farm and have seen what looked like a very large print of something laying down. We are local to the river, power lines, a disused train tracks and plenty of woods and forests. And he's correct when he says that, because he's not the only account. Not too far away, a little bit down the road, just above High Halstow, we have the Hairy Man of Cool in Kent. And this report came in 2011. My son and his friend saw a very large, hairy type man running along some hay reels in the early hours before morning. The creature saw them and then took off at great speed across a line of hay reels headed for some woods. I don't think they saw its face. They said it had some sort of weird hair at the back, and it span its head as it ran. It took off very fast across the hay reels up towards the woods. This was in Cooling, Kent, about 4 years ago. It frightened the life out of them. We are also surrounded by the Thames marshes that are very vast, and we didn't think Bigfoot until I was surfing the net and I asked him about it. My son replied he wasn't going out anymore up there because he saw something that looked like the thing on the telly. And it isn't too far away. It's a little bit towards Cliff Woods as we come down the coast towards St Mary's Island. We have a very strange cluster of accounts around the area of the Deansgate Ridge golf course, and I'm sure many of you in the area will know this. And we have Mrs B's Bigfoot. A woman who only wants to be known as Mrs B had a terrifying encounter, a sighting which simply proved that Medway's sparse woodlands were being stalked by something very weird and unnatural. What Mrs B saw and never spoke of until she confided in somebody in 2006 was that this is an account never before published that has remained in her mind for more than 30 years. This is what she told the reporter. I was in the local woods in the August of 1975. I was 18 at the time, and myself and my boyfriend were about to light a small fire. It must have been around 10 p.m, quite dark. My boyfriend was crouched down sorting the fire out, and I was standing. It was then that I saw them, two piercing reddish eyes, just around 10 yards away. I froze in terror, because this thing was big. It was around 7 feet in height, but in the darkness I could make out the bulk of it. Its figure wasn't like that of a man. It was a mass, a hulking figure, like it was hairy. I really thought I'd seen the devil. I just stood there, and it seemed to lower quite slowly, and after a few seconds it disappeared behind heavy foliage. But I could sense it was still there. I immediately made an excuse to leave, and we did. And I kept that terrifying night with me and never spoke about it to anybody. And there is an account in exactly the same set of woods from the 1940s. And this comes from the Shirley family, according to Pat Shirley, while picnicking in an area of woodland on the east coast of England in the late 1940s, her grandmother had seen a huge animal that looked like something straight out of an American werewolf in London. In this incident, the beast had what was described as flaming red hair all over it and possessed a pair of huge and powerful jaws. Again, it was only seen for a moment or two before vanishing into the trees. And that's quite strange, those four little accounts there, just off the Kent coast, following the Medway as it rolls to London, and we could call it a day if that was the end of the sightings, but it's not. Just on the other side of the Medway, we have a sighting that took place in Dartford by a girl named Charlotte who was heading home in her car from the University of Kent. She said she saw a creature with long arms and knees which came up under its chin as it walked. She was so petrified she nearly crashed the car. And just a little bit further down, less than a mile, towards Snodland, we have the Billingham Hill Wildman, 1961. Two girls walking from school reported seeing a large hairy figure running into nearby woods, complete with an unmistakable tail, in Billingham, Kent, in May 1961. And then we have the Medway footprints. So here goes. Some 5 winters ago, I was out early walking my dog before work. At about 6:45 a.m., I took our usual route, which takes in a large field on the edge of a massive urban development and countryside for several miles, next to moderate-sized wood above the River Medway. It had been snowing heavily during the night and was well below freezing. It was dark still, it being December. We came to the field we usually circuit, which you can see is hemmed in by a large housing estate. And as I got about halfway round, when I saw in the torchlight, coming from my right, a set of footprints in the snow that looked like bare feet. The snow was still virgin apart from the usual rabbits and fox tracks. The footprints continued across the field from right to left. Now my dog was snuffling them and showing an unusual interest, and was casting about and going a little mental. The really strange bit is that the footprints started on the edge of a massive barricade of bramble. No sign of any pathway apart from a small fox or rabbit run. No snow looked to have been knocked off the top of the bramble thicket, and no other human footprints save mine were around. I followed the very clear trail across the width of the field. I'm 6'5" and have size 13 feet. These prints looked a little bigger than mine, say 13.5, 14, and I tried to copy the stride, which was equal roughly to my own. So we're talking about something that was around 6'5". They were broader and very deep, much deeper than my footprints, but obviously bare footprints, with the toes being quite obvious. They then went down the snow-covered rubble slope that is an entrance to Baidu Woods. My dog was still acting very excitable, and following a scent she found attracted her. I took stock and followed the trail about 20 feet into the woods, where it became impossible to stand. Now the problem I have is the size and stride of the footsteps are certainly within human range. Somebody tall like me is not outlandish. But why would someone try walking across a field barefoot and leave a trail leading up to the tracks? Like I said, it's an impenetrable barrier of thorns and brambles backing into the housing estate. The photo shows the field where I was, and the others show the context in respect to the surrounding environment. The trail started from the right of the copse in the middle and skirted around it into the woods on the left. Like I said, they just sort of started on the edge with no sign of disturbance around them. And not too far away from that account, we also have the Bluebell Hill gorilla from the 1990s. And this is Bluebell Hill in Kent. It's infamous for its ghostly hitchhiker, but this area is also a cryptozoology hotspot. An ostrich was seen by a driver during the 1990s near the Haunted Hill. But what is of most interest to the British Bigfoot Research Society is that a large hairy beast, thought to be by the witness to be a gorilla, was seen here also. This coincides with other sightings of the Bluebell Hill beast listed, including that by a group of 5 Territorial Army members who shouted and threw stones at the Bigfoot and made it run away. And then we have Waldersdale, Chatham, the Ape Man. A female witness named Maureen Bond had a sighting when she was 18. She was with her boyfriend in a rural area when the unspeakable happened to her. It was late at night in some local woodland near Sherwood Avenue. They were sitting there chatting as a normal couple would. Maureen's boyfriend decided to light a fire, and as he was doing so, Maureen became aware that something was watching them. She looked up, and just a few feet away from them were 2 glowing eyes. As Maureen looked more closely, she saw that the eyes belonged to a large, tall, bipedal creature that was covered in head to toe in hair. It stood a couple of feet above her height, so she estimated the being to be in the 7-foot region. She watched the creature and was so full of fear she didn't dare tell her boyfriend. She just watched transfixed as the hairy creature stepped back into the foliage, concealing itself and blending in with the undergrowth. Despite it disappearing from view, Maureen knew it was still there, watching them, keeping itself hidden by the bushes. She decided not to tell her boyfriend in fear that he may pursue the thing, so she quietly told him she wanted to leave and never gave a reason. She would constantly question herself on what she saw that night, but there is no doubt that what she saw was a woodwoose. Well, I think she may have seen a woodwoose, in all honesty. That's certainly what it sounds like, doesn't it? And there just seems to be a very strange line of accounts that run down along the Medway, including the Chatham Ape Man from the 2000s. And just one of the many Medway reports, one of the sightings in Chatham was reported by a young girl with her partner who saw an ape man appear to the side of them in the scrub. Then it ran off into the bushes. And this cluster just carry on all the way down to the Medway. And we have the Sevenoaks sighting from 19, I think, to 70s, if I can remember correctly. I'll just get it up. Yeah, 1978. And that's by Mr. J. Smith. I lived in Sevenoaks, Kent, in a street with a series of houses which was laid out in an oval. The street itself has around 40 houses or so, and then fields to the left and countryside, woodland for a few miles. The countryside was pretty thick in places, pine forests and oaks and birches, and it was quite diverse. So I guess you could say I was on the outskirts of town. I was 10 at the time, and it was Sunday night, and I was waiting to watch how the West was won. It was pretty cloudy and foggy, and it was a still night. I can remember that. I went to the kitchen to make a cup of tea. In our house, we didn't have, at the time, any double glazing. It was one sheet glass window with metal partitions, so when we had to cook or boil a kettle, condensation would occur and the windows would steam up. I waited in the kitchen for the kettle to boil, and out of the corner of my eye, a face appeared in the bottom pane. At first, I thought it was just my reflection, and then I looked again. This time, the face pressed hard against the window. It was that of a chimp, and human-style face in one. It was youngish, I would say. I pretended I didn't see it, but was absolutely terrified. I left the room and sat down motionless. I couldn't say a word, as I decided at the time to draw it straight away. I sat down and I drew what I saw. As an addition to this, the face resembled that of a chimp. It had a short snout, black-brown eyes, but with human-type hair everywhere. And this witness went on to have a further encounter when he was a teenager many years later. And this was also in Sevenoaks. And it says the second encounter happened in my late teens, my early 20s, around 1987 or so. I was out with a few friends and we decided to go up to One Tree Hill on the top of the rocky ridge. And it's kind of strange in that this one tree had a bench beside it, and for 200 yards or so, it's clear right to the ridge with a 30-yard width, and either side of it is thick scrub and trees. On this night in particular, which was clear but a little cold, my friend and I arrived ahead of the others and decided to start a fire. We parked the car and made our way to the bench, which was about a 5-minute walk or so. My friend started gathering wood from the left side, and I started from the right. About 10 minutes in, I heard a deep, very deep growl. I dismissed it as cows or sheep from the valley below. But then a couple of minutes later, I heard it again, and this time it was deeper and more defined, whether it was on my side and coming my way. It had a real depth to it that gave the impression it was a significant size. I placed my firewood on the fire, and at the same time my friend joined me. Just as we did so, the grunts sounded again. This time it was a matter of yards away, and it was very loud. I looked at my friend, and my friend looked at me, and we both said, "Run." As I ran, I caught a glimpse of a bipedal figure illuminated from the tree line, and it was huge. Now the next day, less than a mile and a half from the area, a lorry driver driving through a remote road said he had nearly hit an orangutan at 6:30 a.m. in the morning. The driver stated that it was an orangey red in colour, and this was on the road from Ide Hill to Sevenoaks South. This made the local newspaper the same week, and I didn't tell anybody. So there we have some wonderful accounts from the Garden of England. And next time when I come back, we will do the accounts around Canterbury and that area, just of the Kent Downs. And all in all, there are around 21 reports from the Kent area, and I've just read a couple of them out for you today. So the next time I come back, we'll look at them more closely, and we'll see what they have in common and any particular things that pop up, like the fire that was mentioned in quite a few of those cases there. That seemed to be that when people were out camping, making fires, that kind of attracted something to come in. So if you're brave enough to go out there this weekend and light yourself a little fire and invite yourself a little visitor in, it might be fun. And if it is, get back to me and let me know at debbiehatswell@gmail.com. Thank you very much for joining me. Until next time, goodbye.